Before I begin this video proper, I'd just like to give a little quick update or two. In this past week, I've officially begun my time at university at the Angular Ruskin. So, while it may sound fun and exciting, that also means that working on these videos may get a bit more scattered-ish, considering how already hasty my schedule is. So expect videos to come at certain times. I'll still try to get my Anorak episodes out as soon as possible, as well as my new upcoming series, the SCP Files, about my new creepypasta review show, and among other kinds of videos and content I like to bring out there. But regardless, I hope that being at Angular Ruskin will help me with some bit of creativity and how I might take advantage of the time given, and as well as even the location even. Probably use it to my advantage. And hopefully I will get used to some new changes, and I hope everyone out there will get used to those too. So with that out of the way, let's get to the topic of the video itself. Among other things, I'm quite a big Halo fan myself. I've played a lot of the games since like the early to mid 2000s, beginning with like Halo 2 and Halo Combat Evolved and 3 and ODST and all that, up to like Halo 4 and all that. So I'm a bit of a fan of the games, not just for the gameplay, but also the music, the characters, the lore and mythos. It is a franchise that's stuck with me since my childhood. And one of the things that kind of stuck out with this series was the Firefight modes, which was basically like a bit like multiplayer, but instead of having to fight each other at various random maps, you get to fight waves of Covenant and other enemies in specific areas of actual campaign levels. This was something that was first introduced in Halo 3 ODST, and it was used in Halo Reach. I don't think it was ever used in Halo 4 or 5, and I don't think it'll be used in Infinite either. But regardless, it was still a fun idea that I would love to see Bungie or 345 Industries bring back in a future game. Plus, with the 20th anniversary of Halo Combat Evolved coming around very soon, I figured I'd do a video about what if the original Halo trilogy had firefight modes. What if each of the levels in the campaigns had a particular firefight map based around them? So I figured I'd make this trilogy of videos about discussing each of the games and each of the campaign levels, and figure out which part of those levels I would make a firefight map out of, as well as a little few unique ideas here and there. So, without further ado, let's get to the point. Beginning this trilogy and this video with the first level of the first Halo game, the Pillar of Autumn. Now this was probably going to be a tricky one, since this is technically set inside a spaceship, so it's kind of tricky to figure out whereabouts I would have a specific location for a firefight map. But since Halo Reach had the Corvette level, it is proven it is possible. So in this, one idea would be to go with the section where they had the escape pods, and the swarms of elites and jackals and grunts were kind of coming out of them to like attack the Marines and Spartans and all that. Even if it is kind of small, I still think it's a good idea to use like barriers and kind of like guards to kind of protect and take cover from fire and whatnot. Plus the the little areas where the Covenant kind of spawn out of in those like Covenant boarding pods that kind of attach onto the Autumn ship could be a good place to spawn enemies after each wave and round and whatnot. And I could see them doing a few through brutes and skirmishers and hunters as well, even if they never appeared in the game itself. Now, whether I would use the classic graphics of the 2001 game or the modern improved graphics of the anniversary, I would go with either. Either is fine with me for this game, and possibly Halo 2 as well, but I'll get into that in another video. But yeah, also probably another good guess of mine would probably be with the opening kind of status pod opening that we see Master Chief awake from. That could be a good idea, but after a good thinking, I decided I could go with the area where they have the escape pods in. I think that's probably the best idea to make a firefight map out of the Pillar of Autumn level. Now, the level Halo, the one where they actually crash land on the Halo ring for the first time, this one's a bit quick because this one was technically already made into a firefight map. That map being called Installation 04 from Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, and it was based on the cliff section from that level. So I'm gonna kind of give this one a quick skip, but I will say this will kind of serve as a bit of a basis and idea of what the other hypothetical ideas for firefight maps would be like, especially with how it's laid out, its specific location, how the enemies will spawn, how the players will spawn themselves and their weapons, etc. So yeah, this will definitely help out with how the firefight maps will be kind of laid out and all. Next is the Truth and Reconciliation, which in this case I kind of have two ideas. The first would be kind of set around the actual gravity lift, where the enemies would kind of come down from the ship to attack the player and the kind of NPC Marines and ODSTs, and of course after every wave they will have more reinforcements come down, or even have like still occasionally have like a phantom or a spirit come by to drop a few more enemies and reinforcements. The other idea is will be set in the hangar section inside the Truth and Reconciliation ship, where they would have the phantoms and spirits kind of come in through the come in through the hangars, and of course drop a few enemies and waves and of reinforcements and all that, and they will of course spawn some new weapons and all that. So yeah, this is what I'm kind of divide on which would be the better idea. I guess inside the Truth and Reconciliation ship, since it's kind of more varied and more ranged than just having just people center around a gravity lift that they won't exactly go in anyway. But I still think but since we, like I said, the Corvette level from the Long Night of Solace from Halo Reach did prove that you could do a map inside a spaceship and make it work. So there's that. Next is the Silent Cartographer, which is probably going to be straightforward. It's going to be the whole island that's going to be the firefight map, and if so, it would probably be the largest firefight map in the entire Halo franchise. I mean, I'm sure a lot of firefight levels can be pretty big, but a whole island, that will be pretty mad and ambitious, but also pretty awesome. And because it's going to be so large, it may require not only a larger number of players, but also much larger waves each of Covenant. And I think it will make pretty good for island combat. I mean, like army style combat, like probably around like 8 to 16 players against a whole various wave after wave of Covenant. Something like that would be pretty awesome. And I'm kind of just I mean I kind of hope that someone out there can at least agree on something like that. How awesome and epic it would be to have the whole Silent Topographer Island as a whole firefight map, because because that something like that would probably be pretty cool. Having spirits and phantoms drop by with various ways, and the hunters kind of roaming about the island and trying to kind of shoot down all the various Covenant until there's none left, until the round ends. That's gotta be mad, but still pretty awesome. Um, and I don't know what else to add to that really. Just this whole Cytographer map as the Firefight map. Now the interior parts will probably be locked out, since we'll probably focus on the exterior part of the island. But beyond that, I don't know what else to say about it. Then we come to Assault on the Control Room. This one's slightly more trickier because it's a much more larger level. So having to pick out a specific section in it to be a good firefight map is a bit more tricky. But upon looking back at that level, I think the whole entrance to the control center would make for a good firefight map. And because not only of its large scale, but of course its overall layout and how the Covenant would come in and how the players would spawn. The players would probably like spawn at the locked off entrance to the control room, and then all the phantoms and spirits and Covenant will land in kind of outside and will try to go up the kind of go up the level, go up the stairs and kind of the ramps and all that to get into the control. You have to fight them off. Now, of course, the door would be kind of locked out, kind of like the glacier level from Halo Reach. But yeah, I think this will be like the glacier level, but outside and probably twice as big. You'll probably have wraiths and scorpions kind of waiting about at the bottom, and you'll probably of course have your hornets and phantoms kind of on like a barrier or like a rock bridge or something. But yeah, and you can also have like waves of drones kind of flying about and kind of trying to attack you, and you have to shoot them down. I think that will also make for a really good firefight map. Then there's the 343 Guilty Spark level. This one I think is where we start to mix things up a bit, or at least the enemies we would potentially face. Rather than just having the Covenant that you have to fight, you could also have to fight waves of various flood forms, like the combat forms, like the carrier forms, the little infection forms, and maybe the tanker and kind of spikily kind of shifting form mode things that you face in Halo 3. Should there be like a firefight map version of this level, where it would be specifically, but one idea of mine, it would be based around the entrance to the actual facility that you go into, like, so you could have like a mix of the outside and a bit of the inside as well. So that would mean the lift wouldn't exactly work per se. It would, that little area there would be where the player would spawn, and the enemies would come in from the outside and would try to fight and hunt you down, be they Covenant or Flood, and both pretty much. I think there's a fight for map I think would be one of the more intense ones, not just because of having to face the Flood, but also having to find your way around in the swamp and having to, having to find and kind of hunt down the various enemies before they hunt you down. And another idea could be like another area based on another interior area in the level, but I've pretty much decided on a mix of the outside and inside being that entrance. So I think that will kind of mix things up a bit by having an interior area and an exterior area. So the player could kind of have to think strategically on where to hide out and where they're going to fight the enemies and how they're going to do so, etc. Now the library. This is probably another tricky one because this is mostly, if not entirely, an interior kind of level as opposed to most other levels where it's mostly kind of open area and kind of wide and kind of and open, so it could make way for an actual Firefight map. But in the case of library, I'd probably have to go with the obvious little round area where the sacred index is located, and the kind of outside corridor areas would be where the Flood and Covenant would kind of spawn in and try to attack you and your allies. Now, in this level, of course, not only would you be having Marines and ODSTs as allies, but also some Sentinels coming in to help and aid you fighting off the Flood and Covenant. And of course, they'll spawn in through those like little corridor vent things. I don't know. You see the Flood come out of them in the actual campaign level. So yeah, and it's another quick one, but of course that little area would obviously be my idea for a Firefight map based on the library. Two Betrayals is another interesting one because extensively it's basically the overall same map as Assault on the Control Room, with a few slight differences here and there and a change of weather and all. But being as it's already a large map, I think there could still be another section of the level that could be made into another Firefight map. One would be kind of the canyon that you kind of go in with the high bridges and everything just before the canyon where the control room entrance is in. One of those could be the Firefight map to represent one of the two levels, be it Assault on the Control Room and Two Betrayals. But for the most part, they were probably kind of the same-ish. The difference being that you would also not only have the Flood, but also the Sentinels as well, either as allies or enemies. That could be an interesting option to consider. And also, mostly for the most part, still have the same kind of weapons and vehicles and kind of enemies and all that. But for the most part, yeah, Two Betrayals is probably going to be very similar to Assault on the Control Room, and the already large map level could pave way for some interesting ideas for what would make a good Firefight map. Now for keys, this is yet another tricky one because it's mostly either very interior, very isolated and very small for the most part, whether it's in the little tucked in little caverns and or the damaged truth and reconciliation ship, which is mostly the same as the truth and reconciliation level. But I think a good section of that level to make a good Firefight map would be that big canyon you go into where the grab lift is in, and you have to go into it to like kind of fight the Flood and Covenant. Now, in this, the Covenant and Flood will probably spawn in from the grav lift and kind of come down from it to kind of find you and attack you and your kind of NPC allies or other players online. And yeah, I think that would be a good section from the Keys level to make into a Firefight map. I'm sure I don't have too much to say about this and then the last one or two, but I'm just kind of giving up some kind of rough ideas on what could work as a Firefight map. And that brings us to the last level of Halo Combat Evolved, the Maw. This one I think is probably gonna be tricky to some, but I've pretty much figured out. For me, a good Firefight map to make out of the Maw would be the generator room, the engine generator room that you usually go into to kind of blow up the little heat things in order to make the Pillar of Autumn explode and thus destroy the Halo ring with it. However, in this case, I've kind of thought of an interesting objective for this one. Not only would you have to fight off various Covenant, Flood, and Sentinels, but in this case, as a twist, you'd have to protect those little heat generator things and kind of prevent any enemies from destroying them. Otherwise, the level just kind of blows up, and you lose, game over, and all that. So I felt that may or may not be possible in a normal Firefight game, but I thought that could be an interesting objective to do in such a unique Firefight map, and I think that could be a good way to kind of mix things up a bit instead of just having to be fight off a particular wave of enemies one by one. But yeah, as a Firefight map, I think that could work as a map based on the Maw, and and that's pretty much all the levels of Halo Combat Evolved, and all my ideas of Firefight maps based on each of those levels of that game. And this is just the first part of this little video trivia I have planned. I will do a video based on Halo 2 and one based on Halo 3 as well later down, like in the next month or so. So expect those sometime down the road. And these are just my thoughts. Let me know what your ideas are for good Firefight maps based on the Halo games in the comments below, and I hope that I'll hope to make more of these videos down the road. So that's all for now. This is HRC Stanley, signing out for now.